Good morning, chat. Sorry about that. I did that thing again where it didn't like to connect the phone with the rest of everything. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everyone doing today? Was not my intent to stare into your soul like that, chat. I do apologize. Though it is a very nice, pretty soul, so... Good morning. Thank you for getting first, Carmia. Thank you for getting third, you know. Thank you for getting second. Hello, Lilypad. And thank you, Vanya, for stealing first from Carmia. Prolonged eye contact. And good morning, Frosty. Thank you for the congrats. Good morning, Chelsea. Good morning, Echo and Furl. Lizard. Lizard. Morning, Lynx. Good morning, Casey. Good morning, Morning, tired nap time. Where? Oh, I'm so very, very tired. So, I want to talk about me sleeping this morning. I woke up a little bit early and was like, I'm going to get all my stream stuff set up so I'm not going to be even slightly late. And then I realized that after I set up my stream stuff, I immediately fell back asleep. Alright, nap time, you be safe. Good morning, Anya, and good morning, Mitchie. And I laid back down being like, oh crap, and then I woke up again. And I checked the time, like, oh, I'm still 10 minutes ahead of stream. I should set an extra timer for other days. That's an alarm right before stream, that way I don't fall back asleep again. And I did that. And I went, okay, but I'm already awake today, so I'm going to disable it. And then I woke up, and like, what time is it? And my alarm goes 3:32, and I'm like, oh shit, I guess I fell back asleep. So, you know, that happened. But I'm awake now. Morning, Jimmins. I need to get my own little dumb emote, TBH. Come on, Eva. So we'd originally planned on using the ear microphone this morning, but as you can tell, I am not doing that this morning because I'm too tired to set it up and too exhausted yesterday. So I gotta do the classics, you know. Gaming and vibing. How are you doing today, Vanya? You doing alright? It's funny when I'm hearing people having these crazy jobs. Pick up laundry with my earbuds. Do you want to pick up my laundry? Like, tired over there being like, I need to do pre-flight checks. I woke up like a few minutes ago and they're about to fly a plane. It's insane to me. I think one day I want to do a flying stream where I can do like a flying sim. Morning, Dwarfy. And that way I too can do pre-flight checks with them while they are doing theirs. Okay. You know what it is? It's Minecraft. So I'm actually having a lot of fun with the Minecraft we're doing now. Yeah, we'll do a flying sim stream. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Vanya, I would be playing a video game. It wouldn't be, what do you, comprehend it this morning, honey. I'm too tired. I'm happy you're worried about me. Yeah, I'm gonna give you a walkthrough. We're gonna actually go on to Google Maps. We're gonna start up my home and walk all the way to my work virtually. I think that would be the best idea, actually, and I think, it'd be a very unique experience for you all to really understand who I am. Vanya, I'm obviously not going to do that, Vanya. I'm obviously not going to do that. But I do appreciate your worries about me. Good morning, Pinky. Good morning, Pinkie Pie. How are you and the other of the main six doing? Morning, Calypso. How you doing? I'm so EB. Do you want to get a little bit of extra sleep for me and save it up? And that way I don't have to sleep anymore. Just send me the sleep in the mail. I got it. My social security number is 777 7777. Why are we doing this so early? You really want this early in the morning? Just this fascinates you? Vanya, if my social security number started with the number 7, I would probably be still a baby. I'd be a tiny little baby who does not exist. It's me. Oh, wait, no, your dog. A different dog, okay. Wow, very good. See, this is what happens when you get rid of the cat. This is what happens when you get rid of your cat. I mean, you put your cat out to pasture. This is not the right word either. Yeah, that I understand. I understand how adorable your little kitty is, but do you understand that sleep is important? Do you understand how important sleep is? Your cat can sleep all day, you cannot. Yes, I would like to sleep for 30 more minutes. Come be thirsty with me, chat. You're allowing me to sleep on stream? Really? Thank you, but your dog's name is Diablo. Why is it Diablo? Is he scary? Is your dog a scary little boy? No. Chat, unfortunately for you, my sleeps are not very restful. They're not very, soft and cuddly and sweet. My sleeps are like a chainsaw. And so I should probably not sleep on stream because it will simply just wake people up. Okay. What without me? What do you mean without you? Mm. I talked in my sleep. Apparently I choke hold on my blankets and pillows. That is scary to me, actually, the idea of I need to figure out when I have to do my little fundraiser stream of a way to allow Vanya to shut off my stream from a distance if necessary. Just in case I sleep talk, Can you imagine? I'm sleeping here and then I start saying things in my sleep. I'm going to say my address. Yes, that's what I dream of all the time, Vanya. You're so right. I'm going to wake up going like, oh no, I can't believe I live at XXX.XXX Street. It's very true. Sleep scream. Well, I'm very glad that I have never. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. Kosi Hosi. I'm so glad. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the sub. I do truly appreciate it. I'm sorry you have not won today, but I do very much so appreciate the sub. You did not have to, but thank you. No one, literally no one. One night my mom thought he was getting unalived und it scared us. Vanya, see, all you need to do is invent a little time machine. I have not even gotten close to doxing myself yet. The voice spoke to me today. Oh, well, the voice is... You can thank Pinky for this voice. We are still 1 minute away before I can drop it. Oh, that's smart. That is actually very smart. That would probably work. Legitimately. Oh, do you know what I can do, chat? Do you know what I can do? How's your day? My day is actually very good. It is 3:55 a.m. right now. Good morning in the 3:55 a.m. time, chat. So I am on a college trip to Luna Park that has no phone that I'll be gone between Australia and Anya. While you are there, I need you to get me some things, okay? Collect me a golden gay time and send me that over in the mail with ice. I would like to try a golden gay time, thank you. I would also like the grog. Thank you, okay. I'm excited to try a golden gay time. There are so many Australians here, yeah. Yeah, golden gay time. You know, sometimes you would just like to share a golden gay time with your friends. What country would I move to? That is a very good question. Und jetzt I can talk normal. Okay, there we go. Actually, I've thought a lot about that. And if like the language isn't the biggest barrier, like if I can go anywhere and I don't need to worry about a job right away, give me like a few months to learn the language properly, I think I would probably move to either like Norway, Sweden, Netherlands, or like New Zealand would be nice. Mm. Why not Denmark? Cause I mean, like, good morning, Kinky. Zealand, maybe Canada. I mean, while Australia itself might be shit, and the people are lovely, and you know, thank you for the shout out for Kinky. Oh, I mean, the only part I'd probably stay away from is the French Canadian part, because it has been a bit. They've been a bit frustrating to deal with. What did I do today? Well, so far I've woken up, and then I went back to sleep, and then I woke up again. I went back to sleep, I woke up again, and then I went back to sleep. Still waiting for the next part of the day, but unfortunately, Chad, I'm still asleep right now. We'll see what happens when I wake up, though. Excuse me. And see, that's what the real problem is. Like, if it wasn't a thing about the job right away, I would have already moved to quite a few places. But, you know, I make a good amount of money right now for the job I have. And so I don't really want to risk moving to a new place yet. Places I would not move that people think I would move, though. I would definitely not move to Japan. The work culture is awful. You might be moving to Aussie-land. Well, enjoy Aussie-land. Oh, really? Oh, that sounds fun. I might go to a tattoo convention, chat. I'm waiting for it to come back around. Give myself a new tattoo. The new model is gonna have tattoos, and I'm so tempted to try to get the same tattoos. Hmm. Also, is the music good volume, chat, or is it too loud? I could always turn it down. Oh, good. Thank you so very much for answering. So, the tattoos on the new model are a fool-inspired tattoo, as well as some spirally, tendril patterns with card symbols between it. Yes, the Tarot of the Fool. It is my favorite card. Denmark used to be the happiest country, but it's gone down now. Well, the Danish people started looking around and realizing what it really was like there. Just kidding. No. I'm imagining just, cost of living increases and the world as a whole slowly descending. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, when you live in a country where there's nothing there, you might as well be happy. Okay. Now I need to figure out where I can find lava. If I was lava, where would I be? Mm-hmm. Have there been any more redeems? Oh, that's actually a really good question, though, Pinky. I like that one a lot, and I do appreciate you asking it. Hmm. Anya, I would suggest a very nice lotion that might help you a bit. Mm-hmm. also want to find coal. It's been so hard to find coal in this one. And there's no way for me to make coal. So much iron, though. Oh no. Oh, that sounds so amazing. I'm very happy that you had such a great experience. You should take lots of pictures at those conventions. Creeper, sweetie, was that necessary? It's a bit excessive now, wasn't it? He's just such a silly little boy. All he needs to do is, hold back a little bit, last a little longer. I'm sure you'd have a lot more fun with it. Favorite game. Favorite game of all time? That's a hard one. I like a lot of games. Let me think here for a little bit, actually. Do I have a favorite game series of all time? I can't say I have a favorite game series of all time. But I do like quite a lot of games. Let me think. My brain is so dead right now. Pinky asking these hard-hitting questions, and my brain's just like, Okay. Come on, brain, you got this. No, Pinky, you're great. I love the question. I'm just honestly trying so hard. Okay. I love Slay the Spire. It's a great game. I've enjoyed playing it very much, and I've like almost 100%ed it, I think. And if you know me, you know I do not 100% games. 7 Days to Die also like hits a very niche. The Fable games, the very first Fable game was one of my all-time favorite games of just like, especially as a child. Because, oh, thank you for the stretch, actually. Oh, shrimping so bad. So, chat, imagine this. And I think the thing is, my favorite games, my favorite game was Spyro. Spyro was good. So I played Fable when it like came out on my friend's Xbox. And it was one of my first experiences with a game like that, where you can actually choose what happens. And unlike every adult who had played the game, I had not been hyped up for the game. Because, I was a child, I didn't know anything about the game. But, apparently, the game had a lot of, like, unsatisfying promises that were made that could never be kept in 100 years. But, like, yeah, with me playing it, I loved it because all I saw was, oh my god, I chose to be evil and I grew horns, or I chose to be good and I got a halo. And that was so immersive and so cool to me. But it is good to know that games have been overpromising for decades. For those of you who don't know about Fable's promises, Fable had promised trees that grew in real time. That you could plant a tree at the beginning and that it would be a sapling, and then a decade later of real time, it would be a full-grown tree. Which is an insane thing to promise, honestly. I don't know why you would even consider promising something like that. But for me, it was the first game to have like actual choices and growth and things happening, and just very sick. The thing is though, like, nobody would ever play a game for years. And these games are definitely not made with years in mind, so I'm like, insane. Oh, okay, I guess you're right. Minecraft is very unique. But like, nobody tried to do a Minecraft. Maybe they were. Maybe they thought they could. Okay, the music's a little loud right now. I'm just gonna... There we go. I don't know. I don't know. Did you hear that bad die chat? That was awful. Hmm. But game series is, I really liked Ocarina of Time when I was younger. I really liked, like, RPGs when I was younger, and games with, like, a lot of exploration. But, it's funny, though, the games that I loved the most growing up, I don't really play at all anymore. Because they're so, like, time-consuming. You kind of, like, have to get immersed in the world and lost in the sauce, and I just don't have the time for that anymore. I did not play it on the PlayStation, but I did play it. My father had it for the PC, and I never played Beyond the Manor. All I did was run around and do parkour, and it was one of the coolest experiences I'd ever had. hmm And I don't know about the new Fable. I mean, honestly, 3 was a disappointment. 2 was cool. But 3 fell to its own devices. Any upcoming games I'm excited about? You know what? I don't know a single game coming out soon, chat. I do not know a single game coming out soon. Ever since No Man's Sky. Which, don't get me wrong, chat, I loved No Man's Sky. I loved No Man's Sky when it came out. But, like, people overassume with what games are going to deliver, make big assumptions, get all excited. Game developers say things that they want to see and not necessarily what they can deliver. I would rather find out about a game the day it comes out and be like, oh cool, what's this? and just play it. And have this cool, unique experience that I would have never had otherwise. Because even if my expectations are tapered... Hey, Gene and chat. Funny. Are you in Australia right now? Don't worry, I speak Australian. And Deltarune looks cool. I think I'll finally play Undertale soon. And then we'll play Deltarune. Inscription was a great game. I really liked Inscription. But chat, what about you? Are you all excited about any games? Are there any games that y'all want to see? Gene do a flip? There you go. Bye, Mitchie. You have a good one. Don't worry, don't worry. Every once in a while I have to remove my legs. It's fine. They're still there. They just got removed and put in the washing machine. Oh, Chad, did you hear that? Pinky loves me. Get wrecked, Vanya. I know, it's so sad. Carmia, what games do you play, by the way? Or do you play any games? Just curiosity. Sure. Am I fully awake? I'm getting there. Do I sound more awake? Think of me the pasta. Chad, just wait until I'm in more video games. When I get in more video games, then my favorite will be whatever game I'm being in at the time. Oh yeah, Alice Madness Returns. Chat, are you the kind of people who will only play a game once and can never play again? Or the kind that takes their favorite game and just plays it over and over and over again? The pasta. Good morning, Minty. Every dog's life is tough. I should know. I've had dogs in the past. Oh my, there is a game that I played once. Subnautica. Subnautica was one of my all-time favorite games, chat. That was my greatest gaming experience when I first played it. And I hate that I can never have that experience again. No, I'm not a dog. Look, chat, just because I have these ears does not mean I'm a dog. I keep trying to take them off my head, but they won't go away. Don't know why these ears are here, but they won't leave. My favorite, Gary, because it's such a stupid name for a fish. I like the fact that Gary's name is Gary. No, you're okay, Rengoku. Rengoku's wifey. It's okay, y'all. I will never hold it against you for being late. Mm-hmm. T. Heaven. Yeah, was your late slip? Chat, I'm gonna start taking attendance. Get ready. Hmm. Thank you for following, Bella. Thank you. And also, ooh, I also like all of the big fish in Subnautica. Subnautica was just such an incredible game. Oh, once Subnautica 3 comes out, I'll probably, or Subnautica 2, I'll probably play the Subnautica Below Zero, as well as the new Subnautica. No, actually, I can't because the devs fucked over, or the publishing company fucked over the devs. Unfortunately. Oh, I want to play it. Here's the thing. If the original devs are like, hey, you should play the new Subnautica, even though we got doinked, then I'll play it. But if the original devs say, hey, don't play this game in support of us, I will not play it. But I'll wait until those devs say something about it. I am a bisexual boy failure. I wear like white undershirt, tight ripped jeans. Maybe I'll have like a button-up heart shirt that I wear. I'll have a chain and pearl necklace, then another chain necklace. Maybe some large rings. You're just like a mobster, as you should, as you should. You sound very pretty. Thank you. I like to imagine I'm pretty. Only imagine, though. Still growing my hair out a bit. Yes, Chad, the mods have seen what I look like. That is the one exception to the policy, as mods have to watch out in case I ever get doxxed. Because I have had people in the past try to track me down before. And that was always interesting. Thank you. That's true, I think. People are more attractive when they're kind. I'm not saying I am kind, but you know. What am I doing? I want another chest so I can store things. Perfect. Okay. I will be picking mods over this weekend. And it's funny to me that it's more efficient for me to use redstone right now than anything else. I'm trying to find what I'm looking for. Exactly. I'm just stretching. Should I try to grow a tree down here? No. Buckets. Oh, thank you for reminding me. No, if I did psychology, probably. If I had to change my field, I always loved. I mean, it depends. I could probably easily break into web development. I already have some of those skills, and I've learned some of the basic web development coding. But psychology was always the thing that always interested me. And being able to help people would be lovely. You want to do psychology? You should. Okay, let's see if I can find a little lovely place to. Yeah. Fate is second. Why are we doing this again? Next year I want to do my master's. Not really, but it's also very cool though. I think it's very cool that you have two different bachelor's degrees, and I hope it goes very well for you. I hope you've enjoyed having your two bachelor's degrees. Okay, we are going to go down here. And hope, without hope, that I can find another cave down this way. My favorite job? Honestly, I think my job right now is pretty solid. The pay is pretty good, if only it was not a contract work. Because right now I am only guaranteed this job for about a year. And then I have to find another job that I hope is just as good paying. Or chat, hear me out. I become a famous streamer, and then I don't have to worry about the job anymore. Beauty school dropout. Go back to high school. Yeah, you can make me a famous stripper, that one too. Work on baking. Oh, very nice. If you ever want to make me something, I will always take it. No. I mean, if I could do anything, I would just write. I'd write my book. I'd finish my book. I'd write another book. And I'd stream here with you all. Every single day. But unfortunately, that's not a choice that I can make right now. That's fair, that's fair. Well, don't worry, once we hit a partnership, I will be doxing myself a little bit with a face picture. And so then you will have that. Clinical psychology, that'd be very good. I think you should. I think we need to change one of these for a pumpkin so that I can be having the pumpkins as well. Do we have pumpkin left? Where is my pumpkin seeds? Pumpkin cocoa? Where are my pumpkin seeds? Oh no, chat, I don't think I have any pumpkin seeds. What happened to my pumpkin? Oh, there it is. I'm just blind. It's okay. Why are we setting fires? No, I'm sure it's absolutely fine that I stream here and people come here and they're like, oh yes, his mental health definitely seems a bit bizarre. Maybe we should stick around. Hello, thank you for the follow. We are stuck in this accent for a little while longer, so hopefully you do enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, well, there's nothing really I can do about that. I did not dox myself on you. You're okay. Do not worry. Nothing is going on, sweetie. Everything is okay. Everything is fine. Not a thing that you need to worry about, I swear. No, and why has my accent confused you? Alright, we're back. Leave the stretch. Good morning, Hoodling. How you doing? No more pretty accent. What do you mean pretty accent? And what was that accent pretty that I was doing? Do you find the accent pretty? Ah, it didn't work at all, did it? And why would you want a British accent? My dear sweet little thing. Why would you ever want one of those? Personally, I get the southern. You know, the southern has a little bit of the smoothness, more gravelly. It's further in the throat, and so it makes my chest rumble when I speak it. You want a British, really? Y'all really want a British? Yeah, except, you know, I'm going to sound like Paul McCartney when I do it. You really want that? I mean, I can do British when I want, but it's really not the best. I don't really understand it that well yet, and every once in a while I'm doing it, I slip slowly back into the Australian. It's a bit higher here, right now. It is hard, very, very hard. Please do an Aussie accent. Maybe another time. What do I confuse you with, John? What is it that I'm confusing you with? No, that will only do Kiwi. I was just a curious kid. Oh, what a curious child. Because Aussies always go up at the end of the sentence. Oh yeah, nail. Thank you for the follow, Carmen. Exactly. Maybe I'm just pretty, chat. You ever think about that? Where am I going? I've been going back and forth and back and forth. I really like the kiwi, though. I love the kiwi. Because it is so dramatically in question. Okay, if I were lava, where would I be? Nar. Chat, up or down? Up or down? I'm going up. Okay. Very nice. I'm going to pick a random direction and go up and hopefully find us some lava. No way. Have I just been too low for charcoal? For coal this entire time? Have I been just like one Y below coal? How have I not found any coal for so long? No, all accents are pretty. What do you know what's prettier than most accents? Hearing somebody get to speak in their mother tongue, especially not after doing so for a while. I love to hear the languages people grew up with. Languages that I've never heard. There are so many words I've never heard. Well, I mean, there's one language that's not real, and Vanya keeps insisting, not Vanya, sorry, Pinky. Pinky keeps insisting that they're speaking a real language, but in all honesty, they've just made it up. I'm sorry, Vanya, you're just so on my mind that even when I'm thinking about speaking to Pinky, I can't help but say your name. I hope that's alright by you. No, Vanya. I don't hate you. You're just so on my mind. It's not no hate. No hate at all. You occupy my thoughts, is all it is. Why are you spamming hieroglyphics in my stream? You're gonna redeem me, well, go for it. Oh, thank you for the stretch. I do appreciate it. I do. Here we'll sit. There was a girl I had a courage crush on in high school, and sometimes she'd try to speak Mandarin accidentally. I loved sitting next to her during gym as she rambled to me in a language I could never understand. Oh, that is very, very cute. Oh, Luxembourgish. I think the nice part is that if I do get really good with a German accent, slight variations is pretty much every single other Germanic nationality out there. Well, thank you so much for the redeem. No. Are you two dating now? You better be. Why have you been forgotten? Oh, I see. She has a wife now. She could always use another one. Oh, thank you so much for the follow back here. Oh, Bagheera. Bagheera. Oh, what a big cat you are. Not breaking up. she can have 2 wives. Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean the bare necessity. It's why I'm back and rest at ease. You want to sing with a tenor? Oh. You should find a tenor to sing with then. I don't know if anybody else understood what just happened. For those of you who don't know, Bagheera is a big old black cat from the Jungle Book. Oh, I'm the king of the swingers, the jungle VIP. I reached the top and had to stop, and that's what's bothering me. I wanna be a man, come and stroll right into town and be just like the other man, tired of mugging around. Oh, shoo-be-doo, I wanna be like you. I wanna walk like you, talk like you too. You see it's true. An ape like me. Oh no, Chad, that would be cheating. We can't go any further that direction. Now we know. Mm-hmm. No, the horrible light of the day star. I think it's really funny listening to insults in other languages because they're always so elaborate. I get you. I understand, Bella. Morning, Gabriel. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing very, very well. Yeah, but Pinky, when you speak your native language, it sounds like a car trying to start. Actually, I've never heard you speak your native language. I'm just bullying. Oh, wait, let's not waste the coal. You weren't allowed to do the language because you're so bad at them. It's awful. Oh no, not the Latin. Latin's the worst. That one's always so frustrating to me where they're like, learn Latin, it's useful. It's like, yeah, for who? And it's not useful for anybody. Even a doctor, if you learned like Spanish in the States, would probably be more effective than learning Latin. Yeah, I mean, but that's you teach. I feel like that makes sense. Oh, good morning, Satan girly. Have you already gone to your appointment? Did it go well? I'm king of the swingers. Now don't try to tease me back up. I made a deal with you. I desire man's red flower to make my dream come true. Show me what to do. Wow, gut. Alles gut, alles gut. I didn't archive it. Oh, I don't archive my VOD system by the lovely Vanya. There's usually a day delay behind some of them, because Vanya does go through and review them and puts the effort to make sure I wasn't doxing myself in case they fell asleep during it. I'm an iron deficient hottie. Chive? Carmia, are you okay? Do you wanna talk about oh, archive, yeah. The archives. Skizzers, naturally. Love me some chives. Gomez, huh? I can also wake you up if you want me to. Come on, pretty little thing. Wake up for me. Wakey, wakey. What a sleepy little thing you are. Come on. Let's have a little fun. Which skin part you like to apply tattoos? I only have one that's on my upper arm. I think I want to get some on my forearms though, because they look slutty if I wear a rolled up shirt. It's a navel anchor. It is not. It is a very oddly styled man who's falling apart while reading a book. It is a bright red, black, gray, and white. You should get an upper thigh tattoo. Right, I think I have plenty of iron. We're gonna do a thing. Let's see, how's this gonna work? Well, I hope you get to the point where you do like your legs. Legs are lovely. Don't try to kid me, man. God, I made a deal with you. Make your dream come true. Dang. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Do you like a hard mattress? I can't stand a hard mattress. Slept on one for too long. I'd always hurt my back. I'd wake up with bruises in the morning. But the person I was with at the time really enjoyed hard mattresses, so I made it work. Why not? You should do it. You could be Bruce Willis. And I am Bruce Willis, chat. I didn't know how to tell you, chat, but I've been Bruce Willis this whole time. It doesn't suit the daily mask you wear. Do you mean this metaphorically, or do you mean you're actually wearing a mask every day? I mean, you never know. Because piercings would get in the way of a mask. Chat, we don't assume here. Don't gene me. No, I don't have a harem. I got you. I would never have a harem. Understandable, understandable. I have been in a polykill before, though. No. All equals here. Wouldn't want that weird dynamic. Alright, what was I doing? Right. I need to start going to the gym. I've just been working out at home. But chat keeps me so busy. I can't go anywhere. Okay. I'll do this and this. That should work out perfectly, actually. I just need a lot more wood. Bamboo, would you mind growing a little faster for me? Really appreciate it. I bet it is, Bella. Ah, Moreau. Do you want to make me a bite to eat? I haven't eaten yet. I was thinking about just doing some leftovers or making a little sandwich with a biscuit, but I'd rather have somebody else make me food. What do you say? No, we just live underground now. Okay. No, I must have found bamboo at some point. I don't remember when though. Okay, where were we? Lizard rain. Lizard rain? Lizard rain. Good morning, lizard. 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 You get a shout out for the lovely, lovely Lilith. Good morning, Lilith. How are you doing today? And what were you doing? Let's take a look here. Oh, ASMR? Good to know. I'll make sure to stay just as calm and quiet and collected as hopefully yours was. How was stream? Thank you so much for the raid. I guess I need to do the whole good morning, everybody. My name's LuckyJene. I'm a gambler, a writer, and a flirt. If there's anything I can do to make your stay a little bit nicer, you let me know, okay? And if anybody needs to raid and run or get some snacks, please go do so. But how was stream? Was it good? Did you have fun? Oh, thank you for the stretch. Here's getting bullied. Oh, what are you getting bullied for? ASMR always goes very nicely. It's a lot of fun. I gotta start my morning off slow. Chat gets to hang out and talk and relax. And then I get to laugh at the people who fell asleep. Especially during the counting. He's not too much of a flirt. For right now. Oh, why did you get bullied? What was chat bullying you about? Did you deserve to be bullied? A dinosaur? Oh no. Well, you know it's the VTubers. Hey, to be fair, streaming, I think partially we deserve it. But only a little bit. Yuki, don't be mean. That's not old. It's not old at all. Oh no. We have a few people here who are probably near or older than that. You're not a dinosaur. If you are a dinosaur, you're a very cute dinosaur. Is that better? You're a cute dinosaur. Make all the boy dinosaurs go rawr. Or girl dinosaurs, whatever your preference is. Yes. If you'd like to hang out, feel free to do so, but if you need to raid and run, I also understand that. But I do really appreciate you trusting me with your community. And I will be as sweet to them, well, I guess as they weren't to you. Arr. That's gonna be a vocal tick for the rest of the week, isn't it? Just doing a little rar. Why would you let a shark eat you? Bella, don't be eaten by a shark. It's not good for you. Mm-hmm. You want to get a shark tattoo? That'd be very cool. You're still getting. I will never bully you. Well, okay, I won't bully you anymore. Mm-hmm. Arrgh. Exactly. Why would I ever want to bully someone like you? Unless there's a good reason. How am I gonna do this? Good morning. How you doing? Okay, I need to have one that lands from the side. Mods are legally required to bully streamers, I've been told. I don't know if this is true, if it's just something that my mods have told me, but if it is, mods wouldn't lie to me about that though, would you guys? I bully my mods. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never done that. Prove it. But yes, we are playing hardcore Minecraft, and I am trying to survive underground. It's been working surprisingly well. Though I've yet to get to the nether because lava is just so hard to find. That's fair, that's fair. And what's the point of watching a stream if you can't bully them a little bit, right? We're gonna see if I can do this and see if this works. Ugh, I need more wood. Vanya does save me quite a few times of almost accidentally doxing myself. Speaking of, does anybody want my home address? Kidding, kidding, kidding. Oh, hey, look, it's Vanya. Hi, I was not doing anything, Vanya. You can't prove I was doing anything. It's funny. That's why I bully people. I did. My mother's maiden name is. I did not. I wouldn't do that, Bonnie. I wouldn't do that to you. Do you see how much faith Vanya has in me? That they're actually legitimately worried right now. Here, we're gonna do this. This is gonna. Yes. Janet works. I'm so excited. If I can get just enough more bamboo. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Enjoy your food, and I will definitely take care of your little demon community. And if you want to make me something to eat too, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Good night. And pizza bombed. I'll make you. Oh, that's, well, it's very kind of you. Genuinely, thank you so much for the raid, and I hope you have a lovely, lovely rest of your evening. Mm-hmm. Right, this should work now. I'm going to start with a little coal. And there we go. A little smelter. I'll deposit all the finished materials down the bottom. Well, if I make more money streaming, I will happily give them a raise. Or meds, if meds was an option. Alright, we're doing fine here. Just need a few more of those. So, chat, it's time to pick a random direction and hope I can find some lava. Might I have a weakness of yours? Fanya, you little dork. I gotta pause the music real quick. I thought I heard something. That was intentional, Vanya. Kimizu, it's been a little bit. How you doing, sweetie? Hi, hi. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And remember, there is a Discord, exclamation point, Discord. There's age verification required on it. Please feel free to check it out. You're working? Oh no. I'm doing lovely. Lovely today. Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm. There has to be love here somewhere, chat. I don't know what it is about it. Anytime I look for a specific thing, it's like a thing that I run into normally. Ocean. Hi, thank you for the lurk. Hope you're doing okay, sweetie. Every time I try to look for a thing that's normally common in most of my runs, I just never find it. That's fair. Mm. But remember, if you are wanting to flirt, there is space for that. Is what my point is. It's called bad luck. Yeah, I have good luck with some things and bad luck with others. Wait a second, chat. Well, no, you're not bringing bad luck. You don't bring bad luck. Don't you worry, sweetie. You're fine. I think I'm just at the wrong elevation because I thought I was a lot deeper than I was. But it turns out I'm pretty close to the surface. Unfortunately. That should work fine. You'd have to ask Vanya about that. Vanya archives the VODs. Yes, Yuki. What's up, sweetie? People are wanting to see yesterday's stream. Yeah, I used it for a little while, but it breaks too easily, chat. No, I do not. I occasionally will publish them, but Vanya is a bit more aware when I accidentally dox myself. And so they handle it mostly. This better not be the outside. Oh, cave. Whoa. What? That's so cool. Nope, I will not touch grass. Okay, I need a nice easy way out of here. Yeah, Bonnie has to put so much extra work into me, I feel like I had to pay. Okay, let's see. If I were lava, Where would I be? You know, there's axolotls, there's glowing berries, there's moss, there's so much stuff. I can't be. There cannot not be lava somewhere. Have I had the most lavaless run? Good morning, nap time. How you doing? Welcome back. Oh, you think you sneaky? Very nice. Okay. Oh. And nap time is now first. Congratulations on taking first. Sure. But I do reserve the ability to, not answer it. Good morning, Jay. How you doing? But yes, what's the question you'd like to ask? Do you know your context clues make sense? Ass, tits, or thighs? Huh. This morning I think thighs. Changes on the day and the person. But this morning thighs. Tomorrow might be ass though. Changes. But I'm not very picky. I gotcha. It's the team tummy though. I do like tummies. Of course. Why, Nikio? Why did you eat cornstarch? Why are we adding to the people eating cornstarch? This better not become a trend. Well, we know you did, Jay. Don't, no. No. Do not stop eating cornstarch. Oh no, I'm not a thighs person. I like thighs today. Today's a thighs day. Tomorrow might be an ass day. Or titty day. We'll see. Tummy's always very nice. Do not eat baby powder. What are you confused about? I'm glad you don't eat baby powder. What are you confused about? If you feel free to ask a question, I can answer it if it's possible. But yeah. What are you confused? What is everybody confused about? You have to tell me what you're confused about for me to even be able to help you figure out why you're confused. Mm-hmm. I'm a dinosaur, chicken nugget, I'd assume a dinosaur. Why'd you want to be a regular chicken nugget? Unless you have like, well, you gotta be one of like the L-shaped ones. Oh no. That's a spawner. That's just a poison spider spawner, isn't it? Oh no. Not much, you're good. I'm gonna get so lost. My tummy? What do you mean my tummy? What'd my tummy do to you? Hmm. What's your favorite part to bite leaving love bites? Everywhere. The more visible, the better. The darker the bruise, the longer the mark. Oh hey, I found home. I don't know how I got here. But that's not very relaxing questions. I won't say anything more on this. Mm-hmm. No. Let's keep this right now. We'll keep this PG right now. No talking and biting. Mm. Where were we? Is that where my sock went? That does make sense. Can I eat your hair yet? No, I need my hair. Thank you. Mm. No, sorry. Boop, 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 boop. Did we done with everything in there? Oh, I guess everything did smelt. You're fine, you're fine. I'm pretty sure you can arrest a dinosaur if you try hard enough. I forgot about that, actually. That was a while back. Can I put on my own hair to keep it? Bella, that's a bit far. Please keep this. We are not in a space for that right now. Thank you. Appreciate it. You're fine, Wicked. Let's see what we got. Thank you for the hydrate. I appreciate it. Good. Everything is going well. No. What time is it? What's your great news? Time for lunch. Ooh. Bring me back something. Nice. Time to get a watch. I will fight you. To the death. Not you, Vanya. I'll fight the person who said, time to get a watch. In Minecraft. Alright, it is 5:26. And chat, you know what that means. Coming to the end of stream here. So we're gonna have to find somebody to raid into. Let's see who we can find. Oh, there we go. I'll happily give you a hug. Chat, we're gonna raid into Yuki. It's been a lovely little stream, chat. I've had a lot of fun. You all do a little bit of a EP raid. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Boom. Copy that raid message. And y'all behave yourself, okay? Bye, Dwarf. Bye, Gibbets. Bye, Yuki. Bye, everybody. Mwah. Have a good one.